I've seen the charts, pumped them all, had my Lambo dream. Bitcoin castles, now a shattered meme. Hot wallet nights, DeFi craze. When you and I chase those golden days, the memcoin pumps, Telegram fights, the way you'd ape with me through the nights. Will you still love me when I'm no longer a crypto millionaire? When my bags are dust and I'm broke beyond compare, I know you won't, I know you won't, my dear. When the market's red, you'll disappear. I've shilled the coins, built them up with my tweets now, chasing moonshots, ignoring all the doubt now. Hot staking days, blockchain dreams, the way you'd hold with me it seems. And all the games we got to know, your diamond hands and crypto glow. Will you still love me when I'm no longer a crypto millionaire? When my bags are dust and I'm broke beyond compare, I know you won't, I know you won't, my dear. When the market's red, you'll disappear. Dear Satoshi, when I lose it all, please let me keep my dash. When the bear comes, tell me it won't crash. Vitalik, tell me if you can. All that code, all that chain, all that speed makes me feel no pain. It's my hedge, it makes me feel like diamonds. Will you still love me when I'm no longer a crypto millionaire? When my bags are dust and I'm broke beyond compare, I know you won't, I know you won't, my dear. When the market's red, you'll disappear. Will you still love me when I'm no longer a crypto millionaire? Will you still love me when I'm not rich beyond compare?
So, hey everyone. Wow. Welcome. How did you comment also how you like that little pre-intro thing? I'm trying to switch it up a little bit. We have trying to keep production values decent on this podcast, which, against the best of my abilities. But yeah. So anyway, how's it going, Mark?
Good. How are you?
I am good, I think. I got a little bit of the, what do they call it? The Monerotopia plague. I don't know. Did you get sick at all? Yeah, a little bit. Did you get sick at all from travels?
I had a little quease in the tum-tum, but nothing too bad. A couple of the people that I were traveling with got pretty nasty diarrhea and stuff. So jump right into the toilet talk on this pod. But yeah, Mexico City's not a joke. You got to be careful what you eat and drink.
Yeah, I guess I don't know where you went for that stuff, but like I went to a few local stands, but they were all like, "Oh, you got to go to this place. This place is great," and we went there, and it was great. We went to one place, El Gato Volador, the flying cat tacos, and it was like really nice. But I just like threw the salsa on and everything, and I'm like eating. I'm like, "Whoa, this is kind of spicy." I'm getting like sweat, but it's good, right? But then everyone else, the Edge people, and then one of the Xano babies was with me, and they just like followed along, and then they started to panic because they were not about that life. Like, again, these aren't like New England gringos who haven't touched spice at all. These are like Southern California people who like have had something spicy, but not like someone who's half Mexican like me. And they were like started to like panic, like, and I was like, well, why did you just copy me? The smart one of the group was the Argentinian kid who won't touch anything spicy because people don't realize that Argentinians are not like the rest of Latin America. They're like
Right.
whiter
Because they're
than
like
white.
the same distance from the equator, so they're just as white as the New England gringos.
Well, more importantly, there just weren't a lot of natives left in that. So it's like all European food and stuff like that and traditions. And so they just are not into spicy food. But he was smart enough to dodge it, you know. So head movement, he got out of the way. But yeah, other than that, I did do like a 2:30 a.m. random taco next to my hotel, which turned out great. It was, I mean, it worked, but it could have been. That was not vetted. Was my point. I just went, I might as well. I'm like,
yeah, it was weird. There was a brisket place that was like a part of this food market, and 3 people got the same brisket, and only 2 of them got sick. So, sort of hit or
you know
miss.
who the weak one, what the strong one was.
I don't want to make Mexico City. I don't want to be like, oh, Mexico, don't drink the water in Mexico or whatever. But you know, it's a thing. It happened to a few of us. But what was really cool is how solar punk Mexico City is. Greenery on every street, on every median, every balcony, every rooftop has plants on it and stuff like that. That was really cool. It seemed like,
I think that's important. So I have still have family that live there, but I've had people that have lived there before, and it used to be very bad with pollution, right? To where like people used to like, this is way before the uncertain times. People used to wear masks to work every single day just because otherwise their lungs would just be full of nasty stuff. And so it's like basically it was unsafe to be outside kind of for like all 25 million people, right? So they really cleaned it up a lot. So it wasn't that bad, but there is still like volcanic ash that you get in the air and stuff. So
yeah, I noticed that there was definitely smog in the air. Like, you know, I think the mountains there just make it a bowl, basically, that just collects all the exhaust output and stuff like that. But they seem like they've cleaned a lot. I did get a notification on my phone. There was like an air quality index warning or something like that at one point. So I think they're with that stuff. The Mexican that I met, actually, it was one of the members of the Maya Protocol team.
Oh, was it Alex himself?
It was Alex himself, and he said, "Go to
He's the one that got me sick, by the way, that bastard." But
he got you sick?
Yeah.
You guys sharing tapas or something?
No, but we were close enough in proximity when he had to go home. So
okay, yeah, yeah. He said Guadalajara's the next city you should go to if you're going to go to anywhere in Mexico. So I've never.
I will have to go.
Are you Colombian?
No, I am Mexican, half Mexican at least. I have family, like my mother's in Sonora, and then my uncle is in Mexico City, and my cousin is in Guadalajara though. So with the Mayans there, and some Mayans at least, and my cousin there, I'm gonna have to go make a trip. I did spend like a month in Guadalajara many years ago, and still the best tequila I've ever had in my life is there. So makes sense.
Okay. We went to a place that had a exclusively mezcal menu. And it was just a map of Mexico and all the different places and all the different types of cactuses and stuff. And I whipped out my awesome Spanish for a minute and asked if they had un poco dulce for mezcal. And she pulled out 2 bottles and gave us, it was good. Drank it out of that like cola nut.
Yeah. Very nice. Like
way
old country stuff.
Spiced pineapple, chili sauce, pineapple.
And that is something is like I haven't. It's been like 15 years almost since I used almost any Spanish, so it's very rusty. But it came back very fast. So I think I did promise the Zcast folks when they came on my show when I was doing the Zcash podcast on this channel. I promised them that I'd go on their show in Spanish because their English was very not up to like podcast appearances, but they did me a favor anyway and came on when I was struggling to find people to be on. And I was I'll do you the favor back. So maybe this is the year I come back on in Spanish and
stumble through Spanish on their podcast. That sounds good.
Well, hopefully I won't stumble by that time. Hopefully I get locked in the zone. Hopefully breathe Duolingo for a while, and then there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the last thing I want to say about the Mexico stuff. It was very interesting and a lot of. It was worth my trip. Let's just say that at the very least, right?
Cool. You did a talk at Monerotopia, right?
Yeah. That was. It's funny because this news that we're going to talk about. I'm going to officially hit the intro in just a second, but the news that we're going to talk about. The morning of my presentation, I got it, and so I quickly scrambled to change a slide or two to tease it. So even though it got announced yesterday, it was teased at Monerotopia first. Yeah. So that was fun. All right, official intro, and then we get going. So hey everyone, welcome officially. This is the Digital Cash Rundown episode. What did I say? 217? 227? What is it? 217, yes. 217 of these weekly shows. I'm joined by the one and only Lord Mark of the Shield. Shielded Mark. How's it going, man?
It's awesome. We're in exciting times right now in many ways.
Yes. We're in the age of zillions, let's just say. And so let me... with some big news this week, of course. Everyone sort of knows what it is, and then we'll sort of get into it. First, I have to do the swan song shill for Coin ATM Radar, because Coin ATM Radar, unfortunately, does seem to not have too much of a budget for sponsorships left. So this is kind of going to be it between us. Very sad, but I will do them proud on the way out, because for the last time, this podcast is sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto that you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you could buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On the website, search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. You can also search by geographical area, such as country, state, and city. And you can check and compare actual current fees of different ATMs. Go over to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. So with that, I say goodbye to Coin ATM Radar on as a sponsor. Thank you for your service. You paid me when it wasn't worth it, which is most of the time. You paid me a lot. You paid me Bitcoin Cash. That was nice. But now I have a slot open. So for those who are watching the show, if you want to shill something on my show that you think is aligned, just let me know. I'm not going to work too hard to find sponsors because I got so much other stuff to do, but might as well. So yeah, look out. Shielded Labs wants to sponsor. I don't know. Do you guys even do any of that kind of stuff? Or you're more like focused on just like work, you know?
We just announced our service partnership program. So there may be opportunities for us to plug that in places, but generally speaking, we're sort of heads down on protocol development and, working with our donors and things like that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'll find something. There was a time when I think Edge wanted to sponsor as well, but they wanted. I was like, I don't want to like give you the first slot because Coin ATM Radar already has it, and they're paying me more than I'm worth. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll get Edge in there. Maybe something else.
Yeah, get Edge in there.
But
come on, Paul.
Yeah.
Sponsored Joel's podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good. So the big news is the left field news. I'm just going to throw that up on the screen there. Dash is adding shielded transactions to the Evolution chain. This got announced officially yesterday with a bunch of news and stuff. I was made aware of it on a Saturday, I believe. So it's like 6 days, 6 days ago. So basically, we got some coverage from Cointelegraph, and then also we got coverage from a bunch of places, but Hacker Noon. And Hacker Noon does have quotes from Shielded Labs in here, which is, very cool. So, yeah. So we're glad to see Dash integrating Orchard into the Evolution chain, according to Jason McGee. And then he says broader privacy technology still needs to evolve as new use cases emerge, etc. So very cool news. That's just sort of like the intentionally being a little, vague about it, because I kind of feel like I'm very close to the forest, just to see the trees or whatever on this thing. So I don't know. Do you have any more questions about this?
Yeah. Let me interview you about
Yeah.
news. Okay, so what is
like,
the evolution
I'm
chain?
just delegating. I'm just delegating my job to you on my own damn show, and yeah, that's kind of how I roll. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. So the evolution chain is kind of like your test net, or like a staging network for new features and such.
Not really. It's basically a completely separate network that does run on the same infra. That does it. So the evolution chain could be a standalone blockchain. It could be a standalone chain for dApps and stuff. So basically what it is imagine it is its own blockchain, because it is. It's like a very loosely Cosmos based. It runs on the consensus mechanism, something called Tender Dash, which is like a highly modified Tendermint consensus. It's something, for those they were nerding out a little bit too much on, just apologies. Ask specific questions in the chat, and I'll try to translate. But they use something called SBFT, or Scalable Byzantine Fault Tolerance, which is a new BFT design. Basically, you have like a few hundred nodes, like 400 or 500 nodes or whatever, and specific quorums of those take turns processing blocks and transactions. So it's just like it's rotating through quorums. And this whole quorum technology is kind of how Dash has worked for like 10 years now. Like with all the instant transaction type stuff, it's always been a quorum of masternodes, a subset of masternodes that has taken, locking transactions and kind of rotated through them. So you get to have the efficiency of having like Solana numbers of validators. It's a lot of catching strays here. Sorry, Mert. With actually using like a big validator set, a bigger, more decentralized validator set. But anyway, so it's like a roughly account based, like proof of stake, 1 second block time kind of network that, of course, it can transfer funds and stuff like that, but it can also write to data contracts. And data contracts are just JSON schemas for how to write data. Basically, it just says like, prescribes how you're going to write data into something called a document, which is, like name this, shipping address, that, like all this kind of stuff. And so then you just plug it in and you write stuff in that to a network. And then when you want to call that data up later, like say if you're like loading a social media network, and then it just like finds all the indexed data, and then there you go. And the kind of the selling point of it doesn't have smart contracts yet, but the selling point of this data contracts and the whole rest of the system is it's already queryable and indexed at the protocol level with a cryptographic proof that you get what you asked for. So basically, you don't need an indexer like almost all the other blockchain systems. You need to like run a third-party indexer yourself or trust it or whatever to find the data you want. And then you don't have a proof that you got the data you asked for. And then you usually need to run your own node or trust something like Infura or something to do it for you. Whereas Dash has something called DAPI, a decentralized API, that you can just query the network directly and kind of get all that. So it's basically...
Does it have its own token, the evolution chain?
Not really. So I would say 80% answer to that is no. So it's its own thing. Dash, as the main Dash network, is like a UTXO Bitcoin based chain, which is proof of work, but also has like a staked cross-link like element on top for security and fast transactions. So you bridge tokens to the evolution chain through something called I guess an asset lock. So you lock up some Dash, and then you mint the equivalent on the other chain. And then when you want to move back there, you burn those tokens basically, and then you unlock those on your side. So it uses Dash, but it's like a bridged Dash. Technically, they're called credits, and they're like a fraction of a Satoshi. Well, Satoshi in Dash's terms is called a duff anyway, but it's like the denomination is very much different, but it's the same currency basically. So credits are Dash. They're just tiny little pieces of Dash on this chain.
Got it.
So that's kind of how the whole system works, sort of.
Yeah. And Orchard, which is Zcash's latest and greatest shielded protocol, who's one of the primary innovations of Orchard, besides being brand new math that Sean Bowe and team invented, is
That guy's got to be brilliant as hell. Like,
yeah, no, he's a incredibly talented person, and I'm really looking forward to Tachyon, which we'll get into a little later in the context of the voting polling that's landing in about 33 minutes.
got to filibuster until then.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. But is no trusted setups. Now,
Yes.
is your implementation of Orchard going to also remove the trusted setup portion? And
As far as I'm aware, yeah.
that's very nice. It's very cool.
So it's like the latest and greatest. Now, as far as like the actual Orchard tech, I don't think there's anything. It's like being used, right? There's nothing. There's no major departures from it. So it's not like we're rolling our own crypto. We're basically saying, oh, Zcash did it right, so we'll do it too. There are some changes in how this would look, and a lot of this is very new. So some of these details might change over time. But as far as I know right now, so there's something called ZSA, Zcash Shielded Assets, which I'm sure you know 8 million times more than I do. But at the end of the day, there's tokens on Zcash, or I mean, they don't exist yet. Don't freak out. But there's tokens on Zcash that they share the same shielded pool, basically. So if I sent you some ZEC or some random token, you would not be able to tell because it's all kind of the same pool. It just looks the same. And so that's kind of the way they're implemented. Now, this first shielded pool is going to be for evolution credits or Dash on the evolution chain, just for credits. From my understanding, the plan is when we add tokens, because there are tokens on evolution right now, but when we're adding shielded pools for that, there will be at least a separate shielded pool for tokens for efficiency kind of reasons, right? For, less data, making things easier, etc. But at the end of the day, if you want to be like a super like nitpicker on privacy, like it is now two pools then going on. There's like the token pool and the credit pool.
Tokens.
Yeah.
So, well, your main currency, your ZAC or your Dash, and then all the other tokens are over here.
Yes.
Probably, it segments user base based on that, obviously, but other than that, it's probably fine to do that.
Yeah. No, it's like I've always viewed. I mean, in the early days, I kind of viewed Zcash as like a science experiment. Now it's kind of more of a real thing, but still, it's like bleeding edge of, it's like privacy first, right? Everything else second, kind of.
Yeah.
And Dash is not necessarily privacy is the top priority. It's a top priority, but there's other things. And so it's like a trade-off that maybe makes sense to the Dash world, doesn't make sense to the Zcash world, right? Now, I'll have to actually get our dev on to like break down everything at some point. But I think there was rumor that you would be, when you minted tokens, you would have the option of using the general token shielded pool or making your own shielded pool just for that token. And I'd have to think again, it could change in the next month or so, but I guess the reasoning for that is if you have like your Starbucks reward point shielded pool, you get efficiency trade-offs. Like it's cheaper to just have your own one token shielded pool, but like you don't care necessarily as much that someone that is a smaller anonymity set because you just don't want other people to see. You don't want to. You want to protect the privacy of your token transfers, but you don't care if people see you going in and out of the Starbucks credit pool, and
right.
So I don't know exactly. personally, I would rather just have like token and credit pool and that's it. But I don't really know. It depends on how much all this stuff costs, right? Because if you have like a massive efficiency, like I don't know who would want to do the tiny anon set pool. Like I don't
Yeah,
personally know,
so
but yeah, anyway.
can your folks see my screen when I share it like this?
Yes. Let me switch to the whole thing here.
Okay, cool. So this is the Zcash protocol spec, the sort of so-called white paper, but this one is 229 pages long. And on page 9, it goes into the official definition. There's a lot of stuff on Twitter you'll see about like, oh, the anonymity set of Monero, the anonymity set of Zcash, whatever. So they actually define it in no uncertain terms here on page 9 as the note traceability set, which is all notes in Zcash, and now I think moving forward in Dash Orchard, I would assume, are like UTXOs. The intuition is that those are the same kind of thing. And your notes are your coins or your denominations of coins that are sent via shielded transactions. And the note traceability set, which I keep clicking and it keeps going to the index, sorry, is all previous notes that the adversary does not control or know to have been spent. So that is the main anonymity set definition that people should try to use going forward. So like when there's a new transaction, the question is how many notes could that have been being sent to in the inputs of that, which means that your nullifiers are not exposed and you yourself as the adversary don't control those. So it does benefit you to have things pooled into one anonymity set or into one shielded pool. But I think the trade-off that you've landed on, that Dash has landed on, of you have your single currency here and then you have your, giant DSA-like token set over here, is probably sufficient for that, given that you have enough activity in the custom token pool.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of the idea. Again, I would prefer just to be like, all right, you have some savings by segregating the credit and token pools, but for me, there would have to be a lot of cost savings to justify a token specific pool for like a very big token.
Yeah, there might be some deal because Dash has different priorities than Zcash. Like you said, Zcash has always been privacy is paramount, but you have this sort of digital cash mandate too in your culture. So you might just say, okay, X token issuer wants to come and do a custom token. One of the requirements is that they do want their own shielded pool for whatever reason, because the only trade-off there is that right now you have to do trial decryptions of all the shielded notes that your wallet sees. So you gather all the notes on the chain, you trial decrypt every single one of them to make sure that it's not yours. And the ones that do decrypt are yours. And that's how wallet syncing works. And there's been a lot of advances in syncing technology, but the problem still remains that you still have to just, for each note in chain, do this thing. So if there's a lot of traffic on any shielded pool, it imposes a sort of cost on the commons where the wallets will slow down a little bit because they have to catch up with all the transactions. So that's a reason why you would have separate pools. My wallet doesn't care about this particular token, and I'm only going to sync and trial decrypt the notes that I care about from those tokens. So UX versus privacy and all that same story as old as time.
There's some other differences, and because again, the core cryptography is just absolutely the same. There's some other differences, such as I know that the shielded memo field has been drastically reduced in size. I think down to like 32 bytes or something like that. And yes, in the Dash side of things.
Yeah.
And I was sort of asking Dev today about it, and he basically just said basically says 512 bytes. Each transaction is expensive and 90% useless. Seems wasteful. Basically, he said, like, there's better ways in the system of dealing with, like, if you want a large payload. So, for example, what you could do is write an encrypted transaction on the network that has like a large data, like several kilobytes or whatever of data in there, and then reference that in a shielded memo. And because you can kind of write data to the chain in a different way, you don't necessarily need to have that all in the actual transfer, the actual money transfer memo field. So there's like some, he seems to think that maybe Zcash's version, it doesn't need to be that big at all in Zcash, but either way on Dash it doesn't need to necessarily, you don't need a giant shielded memo size, I guess. And again, I have to like piece all this together myself because like some of this stuff makes sense to me, some of the stuff I'm just like trying to figure out, but yeah.
It's just more bytes longer to decrypt or to trial decrypt, but 512 has been fine, and there's in fact a lot of people clamoring for longer memos or the ability to sort of memo bundles where like you could have a batch like 512, you could string like 4 or 512 byte memos together and have that, because a lot of people are wanting post quantum signatures and just longer things in the memos. So that's an interesting thing. There was a privacy concern about being able to segment people based on the length of their memos. But there was analysis done, and the batching, it always comes down to batching. But the batching helped to smooth out a little bit.
Yeah. And so like, I guess like the high level idea of the difference in the two systems is, of course, I guess Dash is a more complex system as a whole, and combined with caring deeply about privacy, but not necessarily the only thing you care about. So there are some trade-offs where that don't seem as important, for example. So there's the byte size, and I don't remember what else. There's a lot of like, apparently the wallet syncing method is going to be very different in some ways. And some of that went over my head. Most of that went over my head, but it's all in there's the dev sprint yesterday, kind of went into a lot of technical detail on how all these trees work, like, all the trees together. But basically, another thing we have to remember is, even though Dash is a hybrid model, the evolution chain is proof of stake. So you don't necessarily have to do that like linear SPV style syncing the same way. So some things are more efficient, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, like 1 second block times, so you don't have to wait for confirmations and stuff.
Yeah. But that's a different concern than shielded sync. But that's interesting. Yeah, because the payment protocol shouldn't care about the consensus protocol. Because you're just proofs and transactions.
But I guess, so my understanding, and again, I do say stuff that's wrong on the show once in a while because I'm a little bit of a smooth brain in a wrinkle brain world, right? I'm trying to get those grooves in there the best I can. But from my understanding about like SPV and stuff, simple payment verification, is like, in order to know the state of your transactions, you kind of have to go in proof of work you sync from the very first block on the network ever all the way over. Like, that's what a full node does. And a SPV wallet does the block headers and sees if you have any transactions in those UTXO sets. And so you still have to go sequentially. Whereas with proof of stake, you can kind of bootstrap the current state of the network and all the accounts sort of like right away. You don't have to go sequentially. So syncing is a lot easier because of that, I guess.
Yeah, because the execution and the settlement layer are two separate things, I think, that can sync independently. And it's like just grabbing the state. Give me the latest state, and it's final, which is the benefit of finality. And boom, there you go. You kind of sync after the optimistically sync or something. Yeah,
so I guess that is something interesting, is like something like Tachyon might not necessarily be needed in this system, or if something might maybe a very different version of that ends up here. So it is, I guess, like the cool, other than just like, oh, we're happy to be having some great privacy here. That's like the number one thing. But I'm also very excited, kind of like I'm really stoked for full chain membership proofs to hit Monero, is I like seeing new things come out there, right? And new angles and wrinkles. And so
Yeah.
like the Dash architecture is, or at least on the evolution chain, is pretty significantly different from Zcash, enough to where you get to sort of play out a live experiment of how certain things would play out differently, right? And you kind of have like almost like an experimental testnet chain for Zcash in some ways, but like not even the same architecture, just something wildly different. And you can be like, oh, well, it kind of informs some things, like maybe crosslink, for example.
Yeah. I also agree. It's cool to see the different angles that people take on things, and things that are similar but different, and you get to kind of look at the deltas. And but yeah, good on Dash for experimenting with this stuff, being open to different ideas and protocol changes and stuff like that. It's really encouraging to see these chains, especially in old kind of, the closer to OG you can get, and Dash is pretty close. Chains trying out this stuff is really cool.
I think Dash is the oldest like live crypto that had any kind of protocol privacy features. And I think the only one that was earlier was Bytecoin, and Bytecoin isn't really maintained today.
Okay.
So it was like Dash first, then Monero, and then I think Zcash was. It's hard. There might have been something in between that died since then, but like it was, Zcash, and then I think Zcoin came briefly after Zcash, even though you'd think it came before. But Zcoin is Firo now, and there's like a lot of, there's like PivX was a Dash fork, for example, that uses Zcash sapling. So there's a lot, and it's also a proof of stake. So PivX is a proof of stake Dash fork that uses sapling, and so Evolution being a proof of stake Dash that uses Orchard, there's like a lot of overlap there. So we can kind of get rid of PivX now, and so just. But so Dash has quite a few forks out there, not that many, and I know Firo is not a Dash fork, but it uses Dash's anti-51% attack technology. There's a bunch of masternode coins. Dash came out with a masternode, and Zcash has quite a few, like especially like the privacy side of things, quite a few forks out there. And so add Dash to like not being a Zcash fork, but having forked from Zcash privacy, add that to the mix, and it's like, it's good to see like not everything's like a Bitcoin shit fork anymore, right? Like now we're actually like growing the tech in a bunch of different branches and stuff, and it's gonna be an exciting day the first time someone decides to clone the Evolution chain and start using the data structures and all that kind of stuff. That'll be a fun day.
Yeah. It's shit, I had something about this, but I completely lost my train of thought.
We'll keep thinking about it. There's two other things about this. One, as far as the tokens are concerned, Dash's token system, from what I was reading on the ZSA stuff, is a lot more in depth. So you get to sort of see some things play out you might not have seen with ZSAs. So for example, other than just basic token functionality, the Dash token system allows a lot of parameters, such as the ability to decide who can mint, freeze, or burn tokens, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So you could just do a decentralized digital dollar one that no one has any permissions on, is just out there. Or you could have like a tightly controlled, like again, Starbucks rewards points, or centralized proto CBDC like Tether, You can have something like that that's like very tightly controlled. And I remember a big objection to in ZSAs was that we didn't want like centralized freezable like stable coins on Zcash, and also that they wouldn't come anyway unless they had freezing technology put in there that was not going to be put in there. But so the fact that this is possible in the Dash tokenized system means you could see all those experiments play out on Dash and see what happens, and then make a more educated decision on what to do with ZSAs later.
Well, in that case, then we admire your sacrifice to that regard, because that's the big. That was the big
Yeah.
sticking point. I wasn't in these meetings, or I didn't hear too much about this, but the lore around DSAs is that we did talk to issuers, and the
Yes.
issuers wanted freezing and whitelisting and threshold decryption of uh, transactions, so that for compliance purposes and all these different stablecoin esque features that one would expect from a Tether or a Circle, or these issuers. And we generally said, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what this is for. And then the issuer said, okay, well then we're not going to do it. And we said, okay, fine. So principled stance leads to these sort of stalemates, and we just went our separate ways.
Yeah.
I think there are, the what little I'll say about ZSAs, I think there are cool use cases that people could be creative with, and do even a sort of Z die or something like that, like your cool permissionless thing like you talked about. I think are still possible given the limited parameters that are available with ZSAs. I think it's generally just how many you mint and how many you burn, and transacting them.
Yeah.
And in our case, they're all part of the same shielded pool as Zach, or they would be were they activated. So it adds to that node traceability set. But yeah, it's limited on purpose, kind of. They're kind of purposely cut off at the knees.
Yeah, and so the part of the experiment might just see which tokens become popular on Dash and which don't, and then just say like which one of those could be imported into the ZSA model as it exists. And just so like if it turns out that like all the transactions are on like Tether or something, or on like local rewards points shops that want to like be able to delete your customer points if they piss them off or whatever.
Exactly.
If like all the action is there and like, no one cares about the uncensorable stuff, you might be like, well, dodge the CSA bullet there. Or
exactly.
it could turn out the opposite. It could turn out that there's a ton of action on this stuff, and you're like, oh, ZSAs now make sense, so let's use them because we saw Dash got a lot of usage on a decentralized, uncensorable stablecoin.
Yeah, I have a dream of art market verifiability, which is a use case I can definitely vouch for. Which is like you have an artwork, and an appraiser comes or to want to verify the provenance of the artwork, and you basically show them like a viewing key for some sort of token or a chain of memos or something like that that shows like it was bought here, it was sent to this gallery, it was displayed here, now it's in this private collection. And so long as all those messages are signed with like the private key of the estate, it's like another box a verifier can check to be like, okay, this artwork is authentic, this checks out. You don't need ZSAs for that. I designed a thing that just uses the 512 byte memos on Zcash.
Yeah.
But that's a like I said, like a cool use case that people generally don't think of. I think they hear ZSAs and they immediately go, oh, ZUSDC.
Yeah,
Millions.
because that's a
like
thing that I think has really affected a lot of crypto projects since the beginning. Is these are crypto networks are incredibly ambitious infrastructure projects. They're not product projects. And like so Zcash built a massive like privacy tech for like no one kind of. And then in the Zashi era, I should say, Zashi to Zodle, which we'll get into in a second, it's kind of like now it's like, well, someone needs to build products on this stuff for the end user. And so like ZSA is like, oh, we decide that being able to do this would be valuable, but like why? And we're like, well, that's not up to us to figure out. Well, it's up to someone to figure out. So someone figures out what you want a ZSA for, some company, and then you decide you're going to build it, or you might just build it because you're like, this is valuable. Someone will find it eventually. And then, it's kind of it's an interesting feedback loop because these crypto networks, this is unprecedented, right? We're sort of building in neutral infrastructure, natural resources in the new digital age, at the same time as it is sort of a quasi company, each blockchain project. And so it's not quite the same as like companies and then infra as it was before. It's like, it's a new era, right? We have to figure things out differently than we used to.
Yeah, that's a big thing with the ZEC coin holder voting that's happening right now. Is it's surfacing this tension between these two philosophies about how the relationship between the Zcash protocol, the ZEC token, and its users all kind of fall into play. And there's a sentiment that by holding ZEC, you're essentially like a what is it? A shares type shareholder in a company, and
Uh-huh.
therefore you get to sort of dictate what the company does, or you're a B shares person and you just get to speculate, or whether or not it's an economy and you're a participant in the economy, and you're like a citizen of the ZEC network state, if you what have you. There's all this kind of
Uh-huh.
interesting sort of philosophies forming around this stuff, and it's certainly not what I'm used to. I'm a former US dollar person, and just by holding
Yes.
dollars I never thought that I could dictate what other people do with their dollars. You know what I mean? And now
Mm-hmm.
we're heading into this space where there's debates about this, and it's interesting to see it forming out. I guess just because Zcash is getting bigger, it's there's factions forming and stuff like that, and we don't all have to get along anymore because we're big enough now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's for sure. And that is something that I think is a little bit more explicitly defined in the Dash world, where when Dash got a DAO set up in 2015, it's the masternode vote is kind of the final vote sort of thing. So when you hold Dash and you run a masternode, you're kind of considered to be, you know, you own the network, I guess. And so the vote decides where the funds go, but
yeah,
also decide, what is official as far as the network's concerned. And there have been legal entities that literally have in their bylaws the result of a Dash DAO vote will determine this legally. And so
yeah,
it is kind of like been called a decentralized autonomous corporation as well as a autonomous organization, but it is it's the same deal, right? It's like an org. Whereas when you have a bunch of other, like a foundation and a for-profit company and a bunch of other stuff all working on open source tech infrastructure, but it's not as formalized as a DAO, I guess, at the protocol level, then it's just like, okay, well, there's some extra decisions. It's funny because Zcash kind of came in as almost like one entity being enshrined into or one setup, I should say, enshrined into otherwise decentralized protocol that then over the years has sort of gone from like founders reward to then you got the dev fund that split off, and then now you got like the lockbox stuff going on, and like it's sort of evolving in a dashy direction, if I would say, right? A little bit more of that, but it's going to look different anyway, and it's interesting to see these like coin holder polls, right? Because on the one hand, well, I mean, they should be resolving soon, right? Is that what you were telling me?
pretty much, yeah. But yeah, coin holders will take a little while longer to get the polls for technical reasons, but there's a number of other polls right now going on. There's the Zcash advisory panel, which is sort of a Sybil resistant group of like 200 people that have been either old developers or grant recipients or otherwise community contributors, like, a known set of humans that's going to vote on things. The
Yeah.
coin holders, there's an engineering caucus of about 50 core engineers, which I'm a part of. Zec Hub, which is like a DAO, community DAO that's for educational purposes. And then these global communities, Zcash Brazil, Zcash Espanol, and Zcash Turkey. They each have votes too. And then these votes are all sort of compiled and displayed together, and we get information based on sentiment of that. But those, I think they're generally binding just by virtue of it being like a strong community consensus. The term that gets thrown around a lot is broad consensus.
Yes.
But they're also kind of not binding in that they're just showing sentiment about protocol features and ideas and things like that.
Yeah, I think that sentiment polls are very important as well as like actual binding votes, right?
Yeah.
And so, for
Yeah, you're
example,
like a board of directors basically, and they can like
yes,
fire the CEO and they can do things. I think
yeah,
they have
and
fired the CEO, right? I mean, it's like,
There's no real CEO, but yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
different orgs. The thing is, and governance in a DAO is a very interesting thing. And so, like for example, like I promised to do work for the DAO, and by being funded by the DAO, I guess I represent it, right, to a certain extent.
Mhm.
And what it does, I listen to because I want to get paid. I want a budget. There is a little bit of a difference though between me, all my like me like literally being having to do everything the DAO wants. Because if they said, "Hey, go out there and message that Dash is not a privacy coin. We're not doing privacy stuff," I would just say, "Yeah, no, sorry. Now you have a choice: defund me or fund me. But I'm not
Yeah,
going to do what you. I don't work for you. I work for. I'm a contractor for the DAO, and if you want me to do some work, maybe I just won't do it, and then you could decide to hire my services or not." And so there is a little bit of that where like privacy was very controversial in the Dash ecosystem for a while because even though it was one of the big features in the beginning, Dash got hit harder than any other project as far as like the privacy delisting wars because Zcash came around later and just did not have the number of exchanges to be delisted from, right? And same thing with Monero. It never got on all those exchanges to begin with. So Dash had the most flack, as I would say. Again, someone has to crunch the numbers. I think Dash had the most flack from threats of delisting around the world. And so the community had a little bit of a PTSD about, well, we want to keep our privacy, but if we improve it too much, maybe we'll get off all the exchanges, and that'll be terrible. And so when I was doing a push to improve Dash's privacy on the core chain, I had to do a DAO vote to do it, and it got like 75% yes, 25% no, which is a good but not good enough in my opinion, like sign for privacy. But so I just said, because I thought, oh, we would need a DAO vote for this. And it worked out in my favor. However, this stuff that Quantum Explorer launched, this Orchard stuff, which by the way, he was one of the first people to start using AI heavily on stuff. And he's kind of been there through like the life cycle of like AI coding stuff and knows what it's good for and what it's not good for. And so because he's also like a genius level dev on his own right,
yeah,
he managed to like use AI in ways he can. But he got the whole Orchard thing done in basically like 11 days. It was like 11 days of like 80, 90-hour work weeks, just like pounding this thing through because he got obsessed with it and then just like got it working, which is really cool. But like he didn't do a DAO vote on this stuff. Like not all features have to do a DAO vote necessarily unless someone makes a stink about it. So hopefully no one does. Everyone's just happy that this is out there. And hopefully, but at the end of the day, like no one authorized him to create this feature. But if it does become controversial, the DAO could have a vote on it and just say, we don't want this. And if they do decide to do that, then either they have to listen to it or he'll just maybe lose money, right? He just won't be funded anymore. Because there's always that little thing at the end of the day where you can, like, if you're doing something that the DAO disapproves of and they say no, you can keep doing it as long as you're okay with the consequences of it. But the DAO vote itself still signifies what it does, right? And so there's also like, what I would do, honestly, is and I don't think this is a real strong possibility at all, thankfully. But if the whole ecosystem got really mad at this Orchard stuff and was just like, no, we don't like this, don't merge it in, and they voted against it, I would just say, let's fork this chain. Let's run on the Orchard chain. And even though we lost the DAO vote, just be like, sorry, this is the Orchard version. If you hate it, you're going to sell all your coins on that chain, and But and then the reality of things is, if like the major dev talent and the major business talent or whatever else goes this way, the value of the other one is just not the same. And just kind of like with the Bitcoin Cash fork wars, a lot of economics play into it as well. So just a very fascinating time for governance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the forks are good. I don't think, like, for example, Ycash hurt Zcash in any way. They did a friendly fork. They kept the UTXO set. So if you had Zcash at the time of the fork, you also just got a bunch of Ycash for free because you can just swap over and point it to a different chain, and it just keeps working. With just
Yeah.
a new tip. Um,
So, in one last thing on that, the fork economics, in proof of work chains, forks are much more like, I don't know, they're much more clean, I should say, where it's just like, all right, well, there's this one and this one. You have coins on both, figure it out. Whereas, for example, if let's just say Dash split, first of all, you get to avoid split through a DAO vote first. You get to actually say this is the official position of the network, and
Yeah.
if you lose the DAO vote and you don't want to split the chain, so Pivx, for example, a lot of the Pivx people, a lot of the Pivians were disgruntled former Dash people, and it's a fork of Dash, but it's not a chain split. It's a completely virgin blockchain, right? Because why would you split and then give coins to the people who disagreed with you so they could still win a DAO vote on the new chain, right? It doesn't. When you split, like with our proof of stake chain, like let's just say there's a hostile takeover of something like Solana, and Mert's like, oh, screw you guys, I'm going to make the Mert Lana. So he forks off into Mert Lana, but then his enemies still have a majority stake in Mert Lana. That wouldn't make sense, right? So it's interesting how all that plays out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, our forks aren't as exciting as they could be. I think. Let's see. Are there any Dash forks currently?
You mean chain splits as far as like that have the same Genesis block kind of thing?
Any of just
So as far as the Genesis block,
Zcash is to Z Classic as Dash is to blank. Like
the only one, I think it was called Safe. There was one Chinese scam fork that shared the Genesis block, so you could claim your airdrop on the new Safe chain, but it was basically a scam. It was like a value extraction ploy. I think that's the only one I remember. Pivx is a code base fork of Dash, meaning they copy and pasted the code, but it was proof of stake from the start, completely different. No shared coin, like no shared coin ownership at the start, right? And I think there would be a few more. I think most of Dash's technology, it was the most famous Dash codebase fork in the world was the Venezuelan Petro. The very first Venezuelan CBDC was a fork of the Dash codebase. And if you look into their white paper, they forgot to change the smallest unit of account from a Duff, named after Evan Duffield, Dash's founder. So they left their little spice in there. So, but as far as like actual chain fork, like same holders of both chains, there was like one scammy one, and that's it. Whereas like Zcash, it seems like everyone wants a piece of that privacy, but is very opinionated about everything else on Zcash, and wants it done differently. Like, obviously, you have Z Classic was like right away, right? Almost right.
Yeah, Z Classic did not like the founders reward. They thought that should have gone to the Bitcoin devs. I think there's a healthy debate to be had around that, but also the time has passed. Many years have passed since that. Yeah. Then Ycash was mostly an anti-ASICs fork. And then Pirate Chain was a anti-transparent pool fork.
Yeah. So for my opinion, all of those should be the same one, and they should have all been at the start, right? You should have let's just say like Pirate Chain. I'm going to give credit to Pirate Chain, I guess, right? You can call Pirate Chain like the real Zcash Cash. You know what I'm saying? Or the Zcash Cash, right? The real ZCH.
Yeah.
The real antagonistic fork, and just say, okay, you fork at the start, you have no founder's reward, and you have only no transparent addresses. And then when ASICs come around, you just make sure to fork them out. So it's like, it's Z narrow, right? So it's basically like Z narrow. That's kind of it. I think that like Ycash and Z Classic can be folded into Pirate. And Now, once you have full chain membership proofs, if there's enough similarity in the way that's done, like as far as like the end result, if there's enough end result similarity in FCMP++ and Orchard, then you don't really need, like, again, not like you need any of these, right? Not like you need anything more than just one crypto if it did everything, but it doesn't. But then it's like the pirate chain, like, value proposition isn't as hot anymore. Now that you're like, well, Monero's great, but we want like Zcash privacy on a Monero-like chain. It's like, well, now Monero, lots of asterisks, but has something like that, has a really good onset and all that stuff. So like now what do you do, pirate chain?
Yeah. I mean, the reason why the Dash Orchard implementation, and it shout out to Pirate Chain. I checked this morning, and they do have Orchard on their test net. So now it's a race between Dash and Pirate Chain to see who can get it to mainnet first. But
so on that subject, do you know, like, how long does a testnet thing tend to be typically?
I don't know. But what I was going to say is, like, there's the sentiment that there's sort of a brain drain, and that, for better or worse, and I tend to agree with this, that Zcash has the smartest people and the best talent, and the most forward thinking in terms of a lot of this cryptography. Tachyon, for example, is a prime example of something that is now that everybody's implementing Orchard. Tachyon is the next thing that, again, Sean Bowe is kind of cooking up, that is going to be ahead of the curve in terms of scalability and private, just another payment protocol using these recursive proofs. So it's sort of the next gen ZK technology, which is really cool. So you might, and my prediction is you will see other chains start to adopt Tachyon-like things. They'll have their own trade-offs and their own principles that they need to follow, like Dash has. But that's the sort of thing. So I think this is an answer to your question, is like,
yes,
well, if all these things exist, why use one or the other? And you need to also take like a wider view of now and look at five years in the future and be like, okay, well, what's coming down the pipe? And a segue, you can have a preview into what's coming down the pipe with Zcash, because a lot of the network upgrade protocol feature polling is dropping as we speak.
Where's a good link to put that in? I'd love to throw that up on the screen. Why don't you
polling results
message me on like Signal or something, and then I'm in the meantime going to start talking about the Zodle stuff to filibuster for time, because they do have that up on the screen.
On the Zodle stuff, I need to quickly put together a little thing.
Okay, so Zashi is becoming Zodle. The upcoming app update will rebrand Zashi to Zodle without impacting user experience, blah, blah, blah. So basically what happened was Josh Swire and the rest of his team were part of the Electric Coin Company. They ran it, and then there was, again, this could go, endless rabbit hole, some speculation, all that stuff. Who cares? At the end of the day, they abruptly left. Basically, the entire Electric Coin Company team left. And then they ended up, I see Neil's posting about this stuff. Anyway, and then they basically left to form a new company where they would be able to do whatever they wanted, or not, I don't say whatever they wanted, but they were able to operate with more freedom to do the kinds of stuff they wanted to do, let's just say. And so now they formed a new company called Zodle, which I believe is this Zcash Open Development Labs, I think was the acronym. And one of the biggest concerns was what they had originally, the killer app for Zcash was Zashi, this actual like purpose-built Zcash wallet that did a bunch of cool stuff and just worked really well. I'm a big fan of Zashi. And one of the biggest tragedies of this drama was it did sound like Zashi was not going to be kind of under, like, it seems like they would have to start with a new wallet, which they are but aren't. So from my understanding, Zashi is going to transition to being branded as Zodle and will just be maintained by this new thing. Now, why they couldn't keep the Zashi name, whatever trademark stuff is behind that, I don't know. And I don't really care. I like the name Zashi and the logo better, but Zodle will work fine as well. And people just really want a wallet that works. And so yeah, it's exciting times, I guess, right? Just stuff keeps moving on.
Yeah, yeah.
At
It
worst,
started
it
really
seems
quick,
like
actually.
yeah, and like at worst, it seems like we had a bump in the road that got resolved without too much drama after the initial price dump or whatever. But at best, depending on who you're going to believe, it could be like a new era for Zcash. It could be a new era for Zcash where everything turns out like growth goes supercharged and everything goes crazy. So either way, I'm like not too mad at it. It seems good. All right, so you want me to throw up the polls on the screen?
So yeah, throw up the polls, but I'll just add about the Zodle thing.
Yes.
Again, I don't know too much of the lore about this, and I'm not going to get into the drama. I think the drama is immaterial because what happened was at the top levels of all the different orgs that were involved and some mediation and things like that, they got through it and they got to an amicable, oh, I wouldn't call it amicable, but a reasonable agreement on how to pass on Zashi to become Zodle and transfer, and they landed just somewhere and they resolved it. It didn't just end up in legal limbo forever and things like that. So just a lot of really strong leadership was shown across all the different orgs at the top level. So it was really heartening to see. And you can't blame Josh for the price because the whole market dumped that day and didn't stop dumping until maybe today.
Still dumping?
Yeah. We'll see. But it was a macro move. It was not based on anybody's tweets or anything like that. So
yeah, and also like I'm crying that I'm up like 10x on Zcash like in the last year.
I know exactly.
Yeah. That's the thing is like Zcash has dumped precipitously since 700, but considering where it came from, because like I was earning back when I did the Zcash podcast on this channel, I was earning Zcash when it was in like the 20s USD, and I'm just like 200. Wow, I'm so sad. Gives a shit.
Yeah,
like I think we're doing fine.
Cliche: if you get the price that you deserve, you get the entry that you deserve. It's true. So
yeah. So let's look at this poll. I'm guessing from the results of this poll, it's all good news from at least my opinion, I guess. But a lot of this stuff I know about half of this stuff pretty well, I guess. So maybe you could talk me through the poll results. I don't know if you've seen it. What do you think? You want to translate?
I have one poll result up so far. Have there been more added? Okay, so yeah,
here's 7 sentiment polling results from the Quiet Investor.
Okay, yeah. So
you want to go over these? Do you want to put them up on the screen?
Yeah. What do you got? You got.
Yeah, put up the Zcash forum.
Okay, so yeah, the first one is Zec Hub. So that's a DAO.
Oh, wait, I'm looking at a different one here. I'm looking at the where the top one is ZSAs.
Yeah.
Right. This is Forum.
Zec Hub.
Is this Zec Hub? Is this what this is?
Does it say Zec Hub at the top?
No, it says NU7 sentiment polling results. It says result we post to be available, Zcap, coin holders.
Yep. And at the top of the image there, it says Zec Hub.
Oh, right. Yeah. You know what? I'm kind of, this is why they pay you the big bucks, because I'm kind of a bit of a tard.
So scroll up to the top there and look at the original post. The original post has 7 different kind of caucuses that have been polled. Mm-hmm. And Zec Hub, if you scroll down to that latest post now, is the one of them.
Yes. Yeah, so this is just the Zec Hub one so far.
Yeah. And it looks like they're in support of pretty much everything.
Yep, ZSAs, which as we covered pretty extensively here, the shielded assets, the network sustainability mechanisms. So there's 2 NSM things. There's the NSM and there's the transaction burn fees. Can you explain the difference between those 2?
Okay, so the NSM in general is a mechanism used to designed at Shielded Labs and is a mechanism to provide long-term proof of work security without touching the 21 million supply cap. So instead of doing tail emissions like other chains do, or doing inflation like other chains do, which tail emissions are basically just a tiny bit
Yeah.
of inflation. We are proposing this idea to recycle coins. So if you make a transaction, you can recycle coins in two ways. You can opt to do it like a tip, like a network tip or something like that. Here's 100 Zats, recycle that, issue that as a block reward later. So imagine like the 21 millionth coin, it like adds like another little bit of issuance at the end of that, but it just gets recycled back in. And that's question two. Question two was slightly controversial this time around because in order to recycle them, you need to burn them and then remint them.
Yeah.
And reminting is an issue with a halving based step function. It's because where do you put them? So we came up with the idea of smoothing the issuance curve, so making it a discrete, like an exponential decay function rather than a step function. So just a smooth curve down with a 4-year half-life. So it still has a halving component to it, but it's a smooth curve, half, smooth curve down to half. And that allows for reissuance of the ZEC.
And as a contrast, Dash has a no halving. It has a 7%ing every year. So every year it goes down by 7%. So
Okay,
it's
yeah, so it's
smoother
more
kind of
smooth than a halving. This was controversial to the, I guess, newcomers and more purists about the encrypted Bitcoin thing because Bitcoin is halvings and this doesn't, and therefore. And there was also an interesting concern where they were saying, well, if you can change halvings, you could change the 21 million cap. If you can change halvings, you could change anything. And, whatever. But this wasn't really an issue until recently. This was a well understood, well consensed protocol upgrade. And as you can
Is
see,
that a word? Consensed?
yes, as you can see, the Zec Hub is generally the trenchers of Zcash. Zec Hub is generally made up of people who have held Zcash at $20, $30 for 7 years and aren't going anywhere.
Which,
and
funny enough, I did some work
their,
for
input.
I did some work for Zec Hub as well back in the day. Not very little, but I did. I made a few videos which had like one that explained all the different privacy models at a high level kind of thing. And it's still one of my favorite videos I've made. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No problem at all. Okay, so then the next part is the NSM burn transaction fees. And this just says, okay, given all that, burn 60% of transaction fees and send that to the NSM. And just another way to add to that issuance pool and a more consistent, stable way to do it.
Mildly more controversial, but still, again, overwhelming support according to the Zec Hub poll.
Yeah, and if you refresh, the Zcash Brazil poll is in. And again, it looks like we have full support for pretty much everything.
Let me just refresh the page. So Zcash, more Brazilians than Zec Hubbers. Interesting. So, the explicit fees and dynamic fees were very different in controversy, though. So let's just go in. Let's do the Zec Hub one and then compare the other ones as they come in, right? So memo bundles. I don't even know what that is, but I can kind of make a guess. But you want to explain memo bundles if you know
I
what that
explained
is?
them a little bit earlier. So memo bundles basically says instead of one 512 block for a memo, 512 byte block, you can have multiple 512 byte blocks for memos. There's probably a cab. I haven't read the zip in detail. The controversy here is, again, it's a privacy consideration where some transactions will have small memos, other transactions will have bigger memos. That could be a vector for segmentation, maybe not. But generally speaking, it looks like people want to be able to write longer memos.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think we sort of hypothetically touched on that, but there's kind of it's kind of a thing with Dash as well, I guess. So like the reason you don't need a big memo size is you could write encrypt memos elsewhere. So like, for example, all the Dash transactions right now, if you use them in the Dash Pay wallet, you have a little encrypted memo field of what it's for, and that gets written. And so you could have like a big memo like that and reference it in a shielded transaction. And some people might be, oh, but this guy wrote a memo, and then this shielded transaction might include like there's extra metadata maybe you get from that, but I don't care. Like I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that like the thing is like memo bundles. One thing's for sure is it does take you further out of the encrypted Bitcoin ideal, where it's like now you're trying to do useful things, right? And that's not really the point of, you know.
Yeah.
But like I like if there's market, I do as much as I'm anti-ossification, I do think that changes should make sense. And let's just do this thing, and no one uses it. But if people are demanding memo bundles, like they want to do more complicated things, more, you should have it. I think at least. Again, I'm not educated on this issue. I could be.
No, yeah, it's always a thing. I mean, there's always going to be some sort of privacy consideration. Like the NSM adds a new transaction field that shows how much is voluntarily burned. And you could get identified as somebody who often voluntarily burns Zec in your transactions. And that's just, but it's like,
Yeah. It's like if it burns 50% of the value, it's like, oh, that's got to be Zuko because he honors the coin holders. And,
Well, I was going to say, Zuko describes privacy as like if you have an overhead projector and a bunch of like transparent pieces of whatever that plastic is that they use on the overhead projectors, and each one has a little shape on it, and then you layer them all on top of each other, and the shape makes a little face, and that's one piece of privacy, another piece of privacy. It's this compounding thing. It's not just like, oh, adding NSM burns will compromise privacy entirely. It just is used in concert with other pieces of data to maybe identify you, maybe not. And it requires a lot of thoughtful discussion and thoughtful consideration about like what exactly you're revealing and whatnot. Something that's revealed right now on Zcash is wallet compliance. So there's a thing called ZIP 317 that defines how transaction fees should be used. And it's not
the explicit fees one.
No, we're not there yet.
Not yet. Okay.
This is something that's already in play on mainnet, ZIP 317. It just defines action-based fees. It's sort of like a fee that is based on the complexity of a transaction. If it's a big transaction, you pay more. If it's a smaller transaction, you pay less based on the number of actions in the transaction. Now, that's not quite baked into consensus. So there are wallets that comply. Most of them do. Zashi, Zodle does. Y Wallet, Edge, all the big players conform to this. But when the Zerdinals people showed up,
you mean the Zitcoiners?
Yeah. When the inscription perverts showed up and started doing stuff on Zcash, they just went hog wild and made up their own fee system. And as long as you pay more than the minimum, you can do whatever you want. So they had like a fast lane, a slow lane, a medium lane, and they were just kind of copying like Ethereum transaction fee semantics in their UIs. And it was just blatantly obvious which transactions were Zerdinals transactions and which ones weren't from that point. Yeah. So there's already some segmentation going on, but it's very specific, and you need to know what you're looking for, and you need to know how to interpret the data. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so explicit fees are... All right, let's look at this stuff. So anyway, we got to memo bundles, explicit fees, and then V4 transactions / Sprout. Does that mean deprecation of the Sprout pool? Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah. So then the controversy there is, you should never take away anybody's ability to spend their funds, even if they are holding it in a deprecated pool for 7 years at a time. I feel like this has been well announced, and Zcash D is going away. So there's two nodes in Zcash. There's Zcash D, which is a literal fork of Bitcoin D, and Zebra, which is the new Rust memory safe modern node. And Zebra will not support V4 transactions. And when Zcash D goes away, that will be the end of V4 transaction support. You still need to be able to verify them because there's still historic V4 transactions on the chain. So you still need to deal with those. And I guess you could pay a miner. You could construct a JSON blob that's a V4 transaction and submit it manually to your miner friend, and they could include it in the block. But as far as like creating new ones and beyond that, it's going to be pretty locked down. So that's controversial. But it looks like now if we refresh, I think all the polls are now in except for the coin
So
holder.
are the questions the same on all of these?
Yeah, it's just
Okay,
different
so
constituencies.
let's get through the rest of the questions then. So Project
Okay.
Tachyon, which we sort of
Ah,
mentioned plenty on, that's next. That got
yep,
we kind of just talked. It's way too much to quickly describe, but yeah, it's like the long-term scaling type stuff.
yep. If you're familiar
So
with
and
Mina, um, to the audience, if you're familiar with Mina, it uses a very similar recursive proving technique. And I won't get into the nullifiers and why you need it, but it basically allows for more off-band transactions and just larger scaling. It's just it removes
yeah,
this idea of the trial decryption and shielded sync from the set of problems that Zcash has to deal with. Um, and
it's funny,
yeah,
and I did kind of go down because I don't know who did this initial table thing here, but they screwed up because question 8 is called question 6 again. And so a
oops,
few of these polls have that in it. Not the one you posted though, just so I'm
yeah,
very
right,
clear. Your ass is covered.
yeah.
But anyway, so question 6/8, Stark verification proof or proof verification.
So we're saying,
Uh,
okay, so instead of stuffing your encryption in a stupid op return, here's a transparent Zcash extension that supports your use case, and you should just use this. And then we can support it, and we can build features around it. We can learn about it. So they're use case specific, and this one is for Starknet.
huh.
And if Starknet wants to put their proofs, or I think what they do is they publish their witnesses or their commitments in this block of data, and then their L2 comes and reads those, and it's sort of proving the activity on the L2 chain. So this is basically saying, let us do Starknet. That's what this question is. Starknet question mark?
Yes, interesting.
Yeah,
And then
and
we
that's a bit mixed.
yeah, it's a little bit more mixed on this first one. You'll have to go to the results of all the other ones, but dynamic fee mechanism and what's that one? The last three, I actually don't know anything about. Dynamic fee mechanism, consensus accounts, and Orchard quantum recoverability.
Uh, okay, so wait, which one do you want to do first here?
I guess sequential. Well, even though the poll is 6, 7, 6, 9,
The
but we'll
dynamic
go
fee
for
mechanism,
9, 10, 11.
yeah, dynamic fee mechanism is my proposal, and
All right.
it is
So you,
for
you, I hope you know something about it then.
yeah, yeah, and it's how do we handle How do we handle the case when there's competition for block space? What happens then, and what happens to the fees then? I'm proposing a very simple median-based calculation based on the previous blocks,
Uh huh.
but there's competing ideas around that sort of thing. But generally speaking, it looks like there's consensus for this. The idea is to keep fees low as possible while the block space is open. And currently, Zcash is like 1% used or something like that per
Yeah.
block. So there's not a lot of traffic right now. It's not a strong consideration, but it's good that we're thinking about this. And if there is competition, the fee should rise. That's the general intuition there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Um,
Two more consensus accounts. So this is like saying, this is actually for the lockbox. And it's saying instead of storing it in a transparent address, why don't we just bake something into consensus, like add a new consensus field, like lockbox value or some hash
yeah.
account thing? Basically, it's a step towards like account based accounting for stuff instead of UTXO based or node based accounting.
Okay.
Kind of interesting. And then
Interesting.
Orchard quantum recoverability. This is like an escape hatch for people if a discrete log quantum attack starts on Zcash and we detect it, this is like a little escape pods that we give all the orchard holders to basically, it uses symmetric encryption. So you come and you probably type a little password or you have a passphrase or something like that, and it just locks your coins up in this quantum proof little box that you can then recover once the quantum attack is mitigated or whatever happens.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as then
Yeah.
we're going to go down the sort of results of all these polls. Now we've kind of defined what they are.
Yeah.
But so the Zec Hub one is just like overwhelmingly yes for everything, not so much on the Stark verification stuff and not as much on the consensus accounts, but still pretty overwhelming. And then Zcash Brazil, a lot of Brazilians here, they like a lot of things, but they were not a big fan of it. Everything was positive, but explicit fees were like 2-to-1 kind of thing. And so were dynamic fees. I don't know, they're really into the fee stuff.
Yeah.
Then we go down to the engineering caucus, and this one is an interesting result. First of all, ZSAs were much more controversial here. Still 24 support, 14 oppose, all this other stuff. And then the Stark verification stuff is actually more no's than yeses for
Yeah.
the engineers. Interesting. Probably because, like, engineer your own shit, Starknet, whatever. Maybe it's just like the complexity or the attack field or whatever of these two ones that were more controversial.
Yeah, there's also a sentiment about we should always be increasing shielded spending and decreasing transparent spending. And that's controversial in its own right. But TZEs have transparent in it, transparent Zcash extension. So it's explicitly used in the transparent pool.
Yeah, for sure. And
That
so then we
might
get to Zcap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Zcap, they did a percentage thing here instead.
Yeah.
ZSAs mostly support, a little bit opposed, a little bit of controversy, not too bad. All the other stuff seems to be pretty good. Tachyon coming in strong, as is quantum recoverability. Stark verification stuff, barely yes, and then some of the last two here. There's a little bit more controversy in something, but really the Stark verification is the one controversial one here, I would say. And ZSAs, of course, a little bit, but still fine. And then Zcash Espanol, we have it's pretty much like overwhelmingly yes to everything except they don't like this Starknet stuff. Oof, people don't like that.
I know, poor Abdel, he's gonna cry.
Well, but there's a lot of positive ones on that too. It's like just because it doesn't win. Zcash Turkey, so there's like 7 people there. Everything passed pretty much. Explicit fees were a nail biter. Same with Tachyon. I don't know why the Turks don't like Tachyon. Maybe because
that's really interesting. Yeah.
Does it mean anything offensive in Turkish? I don't know. Yeah, is that it? Is that the last poll right now?
The big granddaddy coin holder poll is coming soon, but it's going to take them a little while to.
So it's not going to be a during the show type of thing.
No, unfortunately not. So this is the end of this segment here, but pretty exciting stuff. I think the coin holders are going to be more opposed to certain things, so that's going to be interesting to see that coming in.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think about like Sybil mechanism type stuff, right? And so I don't know who decides who's in all these groups. I'm sure they just like polled the people who are there already. But like I wonder if you could like pivot these polls by like, I mean, obviously some things like the engineering caucus, it's hard to just Sybil that group. But like some of these community groups, I wonder if you could like have a bunch of people in. But the coin holder thing, on the one hand, is impossible to Sybil because you need actual you need to hold coins. On the other side, you might think that could be, if it's like a new age bag holder, one of the, the real Turkish caucus, if you know what I'm saying, comes in, then maybe that could be very different. But like, it's funny because a lot of this governance stuff, I'm sort of a veteran of. Later this summer, I'll be like 10 years in the Dash DAO in and out, kind of. I'll have like a perspective of this whole thing. And like, there's been a lot of times when there have been very controversial things that have come out and people have argued over, and there's been flame wars and all this kind of shit. And you really think that it's one way, and like any social poll you put is like really skewed. And then you hit it with the master vote, again, the people with actual money involved, and it's just very different. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay. Someone was trying to sybil this discussion here. Oh, interesting. And so the coin holder poll will be very interesting because on the one hand, I think it'll be more valid, but on the other hand, it's not like a well-established voting mechanism where people have like the coins in master nodes this whole time to where you just pull those. It's more like the participation element might be a little off.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
if you go back to the forum home
Yeah.
and click on, oh dear. Let me just see if I can find this. Dismad was posting the. I'll post the link.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, it's in the chat.
You signal pinged me that, right?
Well,
Yeah. I'll
there.
just drop that in there. Interesting. So
If you go to that post there, it's the last post in the thread. You'll see that there's, according to this, 198 is the top number of ballots in the coin holder poll. So it's by far the biggest cardinality poll.
yeah, people were very opinionated on ZSAs.
Oh yeah.
And there's no cross-link in any of this stuff, right? Just
no, crosslink is more like a next upgrade kind of thing.
Yeah, it's out there. And so it's funny to see the most, like, it's like not a lot of votes on some of these things, but the NSM at a decent amount, and then it's like ZSAs and Tachyon. And I guess everyone, I'm sure, wants, I'm making assumptions here, but I think everyone wants Tachyon because like the two major Z camps, as it were, from my understanding, rudimentary understanding of the community, are the kind of like, if I were to, the Church of Zuko / the Church of Josh, as it were, and that's being maybe inaccurately
highly
like
reductionist, but yeah,
highly reductionist, where it's just like the old school Zcash tech people, and then the new school growth people. And I think both of those camps love Tachyon. If I were to, like, I don't really think there's anyone who doesn't like it. Now, on the other hand, like NSM, I don't know quite. Maybe some of the new school might not like it as much, but I don't know. Whereas
they like it. No. There's more overlap than you think. Probably they like it in theory. They're just wary of the issuance change. They don't like to see.
Yes. So they probably mostly like it, but are not as hardcore as the old schoolers. Whereas ZSAs are probably along party lines a little bit more.
ZSA is the really contentious one here.
Yeah, and it's not just. It is funny because, like, for example, to dip into the world of politics for a second, unfortunately, of like local New Hampshire politics, there's a lot of debate over housing and zoning regulations, right? Where people are like some people are trying to get it easier to build housing in the state, and other people are trying to make it harder. And that is a very controversial issue, but it's very much not along party lines. Half the Republicans and half the Democrats are for each of these things, which makes it a very interesting. Usually you see very red versus blue. And this one, the lines of that seem to be generational, where the older generations seem to be like, no building. And the younger people are like, I can't afford a house, man. So it is kind of funny where like ZSAs seem to be like a party line type thing. But I'm just guessing a lot too, just from what I've seen on social stuff.
Yeah, it's not as tidy as that, but there's definitely some sort of delineation. Which I wouldn't know how to define what the split is here, but it's just this sort of like the ossifier types versus the Zexcelerationists. The ossifiers call themselves Zcash maximalists. I've seen people define themselves like I am a Zcash maximalist, which I guess it just means the same as like a Bitcoin maximalist, but for Zcash, and that just means like make it more like Bitcoin, I guess. Which that's not really my thing. I'm more on the acceleration side. I'll reveal now that I voted support on every single question.
Well, there you go.
Because why not? I figured it'd be good to just have that voice out there. But I don't see a huge problem with any of these particular upgrades here. The Sprout one, maybe I could be on the fence about, but
yeah,
I like trimming things down. If we can delete some of the pages out of the protocol spec, get that down to under 200 pages or something, and we can delete a bunch of code, that's always good. So
yeah, the thing with the Sprout one, it does sort of highlight something interesting in crypto, which is like keys and key access and stuff. Now, I think I would feel like, first of all, people have lost a lot of keys over the years, just tons of keys. And probably like 90%, like, being funny by saying a lot of Zcash might have been lost in the whole Zec wallet thing. Like, we don't really know how many people are stuck in there. Or how many people got it recovered or whatever. But like, especially like Bitcoin, there's probably like half of Bitcoin supply is permanently unrecoverable, I would say, or more, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the percentage when you go to Bitcoin forks goes way up. So as far as like the real market cap of like a BSV or an eCash is probably not nearly that high, right? But so I think that people are like, oh, why would you ever like, I think that I think that in a world if we had a world where people were easier to contact, like you could contact these people and say your coins are going away if you don't do something, man. I think that would change a lot. Also, I think that if it was harder to lose your coins permanently, I think that would change a lot, make this a lot of an easier decision.
Yeah.
As well as I kind of like the idea. I like the idea of an NSM for lost coins in theory, and it's a very dangerous idea to play with, right? But like, I don't like coins to just be like stuck forever. I'd like them to go back into the NSM. If someone dies and he loses his keys, in theory, I'd like that to go to the NSM. The problem is the can of worms that opens. Like
a million blocks. If your coins don't move for a million blocks or 15 years or something like that, maybe you could talk about something like that, some sort of lost coin recovery, or
the problem is like a 25 year or something, but
something like that.
None of this tech has been here 25 years, so
but yeah, it's super controversial because you want the idea that you'll be able to look through your grandfather's things and find 12 words written on a piece of paper and be like, oh, I wonder if this is a Bitcoin thing, and then go and load it up, and who knows?
Yeah. But that's also a careless opinion of mine, right? It's not a hardcore opinion. I'm not going to stake a reputation on it. It's also like, I understand there's a lot of negatives that come around with this thing too.
It's a principle thing. I think the Bitcoin people generally have backwards compatibility as a hardline principle that they have. But then there's like sort of like, what version of I forget who was talking to us about this, but what version of like Bitcoin Core would you have to spin up? What previous version to like spend Satoshi's coins? Because like those are some old weird, I don't know the history of the formats and the things, but like those aren't fully supported by modern Bitcoin software now, are they? Like you have to do something special.
I think so.
Yeah.
There's definitely like the permanence of all this stuff. That's the other thing, is we're building crazy timeless structures, but it's also living software. And quantum stuff is going to change everything anyway. So
yeah,
I kind of feel like you have to be. That's one reason. Like there are a lot of Bitcoin people that believe this, but also a lot of. Do you know who like Nikita Zhavoronkov is of Blockchair?
I think I've seen their tweets, but I don't know anything else about them.
Blockchair is a fantastic block explorer, by the way. I love it. But,
yeah, I do like Blockchair.
Nikita, who runs it, is a kind of an old school big blocker. He was the first like opinion leader of any kind that I saw criticizing Ethereum's lack of scaling. Like when Ethereum pivoted to L2 stuff, I didn't know they had, or they were starting to. He was like the first guy to stay on the alarm on that stuff. So that's kind of where I started paying attention to him. He believes, he has this weird, he has an idea that I don't believe. Let me just say that up front, that he believes that like, he believes in the set in stone protocol type stuff. He says that once it's done, you don't need protocol devs anymore. Just get rid of them. And I wonder how serious of a take that is, but like, it's kind of like there's no governance problems if there's nothing to change. But as far as I know, you do need to change the protocol all the damn time to like fix code and stuff like that. And someone has to
fix a bug.
Merge. Then you have a quantum threat. You have to change a lot of stuff. And so I kind of feel like the only way forward is through. The only way to survive is governance. You need.
What is the argument there? So you create a protocol, you drive it out to the wilderness, and you set it free, and you go, you're free, go run, and then there's a quantum threat. Do you just make a new protocol and everybody's just expected to swap their coins to that before?
I don't know. I don't think it's, in my opinion, it hasn't been that well thought through. Because that's what Bitcoiners pretend to do. All of them. Well, not the Bitcoin Cash people at least admit that they're changing things and they're improving things and stuff. But Bitcoin BTC people, like they haven't had a hard fork in like 14 years or something. It's been a while. Maybe less than that. Maybe 12 years or something. But it's been a while since they've had a hard fork. And they're just like, well, network consensus and soft forks, but just you don't change the protocol. It's all immutable, whatever. And so at some point there will need to be a hard fork, I'm sure, as far as the quantum stuff. And so they're going to have to figure out. Now, BSV is just the way they get around stuff is they lie. They just say, oh, set in stone, permanent Satoshi's this, and then they're changing shit all the time. They're like, but it's set in stone. I'm like, all right, whatever you want to say. Like
for this part's not set in stone, but everything else is.
Yeah.
Zcash's culture has always just been, this is going to be an evolving thing. We're going to keep trying stuff out. The split
always until now, right?
I think the major split, maybe people don't see this or not, but it's the zero sum people versus the not zero sum people, because you'll hear a lot of arguments like this. Don't focus on feature X. Focus on scaling. Scaling is the only thing that matters right now. We shouldn't be distracted or using any resources on things besides scaling. And I think there's more resources available than they think there are. And I think we can have both. I think I'm pro scaling and I'm pro some other stuff. And scaling may even be a little bit premature right now, but I think the goal is they're sort of tied in with like the Gen Zcash people and the marketing. There's like a Zcash mimetic warfare division. And and I think they're really pushing for adoption. And they're saying, okay, well, when we get all this adoption that we think we're going to get, which I hope they get, don't get me wrong, you better be ready with scaling.
Like, how will you get to zillions if Zcash doesn't scale?
Exactly.
You got to scale. So.
That's a great way of putting it. So it's an interesting thing right now. But these polls are they're going to be really going to be fascinating when the coin holder polls come in. And then a note on Sybil resistance. I mean, I there's this weird thing where like these polls that we're looking at right now with the email, one person, one email, one vote. You could Sybil this by submitting multiple email addresses, I guess. I think a better criticism is that it's sort of an inside group. Like these people kind of all know each other and stuff like that, which is whatever. But the coin holder poll is one ZEC, one vote, which if they wanted to juice the number of ballots, they could split their wallet up into multiple seed phrases and vote. I don't know why they would. It's kind of a weird thing to do.
Because it's total ZEC behind it that's polled, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's one ballot could vote with 1 million ZEC and another ballot could vote with 1 ZEC, or you could break it up into multiple things if you wanted it to look like there's more than one ballot. So the coin holder voting is technically not as Sybil resistant as the email, the person, you ask them to vote kind of thing. However, it takes minutes to vote for one question with the coin holder poll because it has to go through this whole Comet BFT thing. So the pain in the acidness of the voting protocol is almost a Sybil resilient thing in and of itself, because who's going to sit there for hours and split up all their coins and do that? So the numbers on the coin holder polling look really good. It's a long way of me saying these numbers look awesome, and I'm thrilled to see so much participation in general across all the polling here. It's really cool.
Yeah, the one thing that I have noticed in the from the dash down stuff is you do sometimes get voter fatigue. And the thing is, you do have, like, Dash has voting every single month, like clockwork.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of months over 11 years, right? So it's mostly like budget stuff. So a lot of people tune out. In fact, I actually do this with I usually do quarterly budget proposals for my stuff. I'm like, okay, here's my quarterly budget I want. You can vote me out every month if you want, but I just submit it. And usually people vote once and they don't remove their votes unless they need to later. But when I hit Q4, I always do Q4 plus 1 because the December voting cycle is a nightmare because of like holidays and stuff. But you know who doesn't have family who loves them? The trolls. So it's true that like the trolls strike. So I've had some like nail biters or gotten defunded or whatever. I don't remember mix of whatever. But during December, because everyone else is like doing real stuff, and then the trolls like amp up their opposition, then you can lose some stuff. So I always do the 4+1, the 3+1 thing, and then I do the rest of just the short Q1, proposal. And it's
don't do polling in December.
But also, like, these polls, I don't know how often you're gonna have these, but I wouldn't do them more than like once a year.
No, this is a special poll for Network Upgrade 7, and then the grants polls are once every quarter, but that's just coin holders.
Yes.
And those are retroactive grants. But hey, I gotta get going here. I have another call.
Sounds good.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep, the X stream cut out like 20 minutes ago, and there's 2 streams. So I'm gonna delete the original and just upload the whole thing. But yeah, good having you on. Good having good to see Zcash moving forward. Good to see Dash is moving forward.
Yeah.
Good
Exciting
times. Let's hope full chain membership proofs hits Monero pretty soon. That'll be awesome too. Just like zillions. That's all I have to say. Zillions.
All right. See ya.
Yep, sounds good.
Adam, we're here because we love you. And we're all tired of watching you get abused.
Abused? By who?
Oh, hi, I'm Visa. I charge you 29% interest, 3% foreign fees, and make you wait 3 days to see if your payment went through.
But I thought you were my friend.
No, Dash is your friend. Instant, private, under a penny, and with Dash Spend, you walk into over 100,000 stores and pay like a boss.
All ready? Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. Feel alive, guys. This is awesome. Tastes like freedom. And I save 5% by using the app.
That's the Dash High, baby.
Let's go.
Download the mobile wallet, one tap, boom, financial sovereignty.